cloud. Beautiful. Okay, great. Woodpecker over there. Yeah, it's like a bird park here. Okay, so the winters are long and hard, but spring comes and and it's like really diverse and really energizing. So wanting to bring some of that through for everyone. All right. So last week, I hope you all had a chance to listen to class one. What I loved about class one and the piece that I'm super passionate about is like the divine feminine and the rising the divine feminine within, and how that starts to create a ripple effect through the family matrix, because it does, because the family matrix is permeated by patriarchal consciousness. We can't help it because of generational trauma, ancestral trauma, because of our experience with past lifetimes. So I hope you had a chance to listen to that, because it's beautiful and it's important. Last module we went through clear the relationship of spouse or partner. So this week I want to take it another layer deeper with the masculine, and I want to go into the father wound. So same as the mother wound, there's nothing necessarily, of course, we love our fathers, and at the same time we can notice and be present with where there's been generational or ancestral trauma, or where different choices have been made um, out of a disconnect to truth or empowerment, or recognizing the true divine masculine template. And so that's what we want to look at today. And as always, I don't know what's going to come through, but I always love how it comes through. So we're looking at the father. And usually when we're looking at the masculine too, because I know some of you are doing actually all three of you on here today have done the Flower of Life Akashic certification. So, when we're looking at the masculine, we're usually looking at three core archetypes. And it's usually the lover, the brother, the father, when we're looking at recalibrating our inner templates, like from the wounded masculine to the sacred masculine. So we're going to get into sibling, and not all of us have brothers, but we'll see how this plays out, because even as I say that, I can actually see some of the brother template in my exchange with my sibling, with my sister. So this is really cool. So we're going to look at the father today, and the father usually shows up as the controller, suppressor, dominator. So it's kind of like where the wounded masculine, or the patriarchal consciousness showed up in our experience with our father. And again, this is like totally not about blame. This is just about recognizing where in our experience we know that our parents, for the most part, did the best that they could, with what they were given and where they came from. And so we're just noticing what we notice about where that showed up in our experience. And we're probably traveling past lifetime, but a lot of that gets recreated present lifetime, and we want to clear that out, because a lot of that template, our internal template and our experience of the controller, suppressor, dominator, the wounded masculine aspect, shows up from the father template, the wounded masculine aspect. So we want to untangle that, and we want to reharmonize and recalibrate both the queen and king templates to create a different experience of how we can show up in our sovereignty, and how we can show up in our experience of being with our divine feminine power and feeling supported by the divine masculine. And it's, this is one reason why I'm so passionate about this piece, because I've held space for so many women. And as we recalibrate the inner templates, like I just see it over and over again, it is reflected externally. All right. So, because a lot of times it's like we think the work is external, but it has so much to do with our own inner experience. All right. So let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and sink in. Let's go ahead and see what's coming through. And with that, going ahead, closing your eyes, dropping your chin, if that feels good to you. Going ahead and just presencing yourself to your environment. So just any scents, any sounds, noticing the temperature of the room. And then with that, let's go ahead and any focus that we have invested in, let's just say last week, throughout today, throughout the next 1 or 2 weeks, let's go ahead and pull all of that right to the present moment. And let's take a deep breath in through the nose and down into the energetic womb space. And then up and out through the mouth. And we'll do that breath 2 more times, bringing it to the count of 3. And then I'm going to go ahead and call down the temples of divine love, light, truth, abundance, wisdom, and power to descend, grow, and expand around us, calling in our guides, angels, masters, teachers, goddesses to be present, and for truth and accuracy to be obtained for the highest good of every woman on this call and every woman who will be listening to this call in the future. And so it is. And then bringing our focus to the energetic womb space, just, located a couple of inches below the belly button, and seeing that fill up with the delicious golden energy, and then seeing that swish and swirl through the sacral. Bringing that down through the core of the body, down through all the layers of earth and crust and soil and root and rock. And then we're just going to allow that light to wrap itself around a jade crystal at the core of Mother Earth. And then with that, just letting your body weight drop just a little bit more and a little bit more. And then like allowing yourself to drop into your back body. So just like relinquishing like all control or attachment, like for the present moment. Everything you need in this present moment is here. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to call down the temples of divine love, light, truth, abundance, wisdom, and power to descend, grow, and expand around us, calling in our guides, masters, angels, teachers, goddesses, ancestors to be here with us now, asking this to be a divinely protected space where only the highest frequencies of love and light shall exist. And so it is. Banishing all negative influences, should there be any. Thank you, thank you. And then let's go ahead and bring our focus to the heart space located at the center of the chest. And we'll go ahead and see the magenta rose bloom open. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and see the golden grid of the flower of life begin to expand and swirl out from the heart space located at the center of the chest. We're going to let that pure wisdom and high frequency light, the radiant divine substance of all of creation, that is interwoven into all of life, begin to permeate and infuse itself within us, out from us, and all around us into the Akashic field. We're going to let that light continue to grow, expand, and interpermeate with the physical and non-physical reality that exists before us, all around us, and within us. Continuing to let it flower and expand. Seeing, sensing, feeling as the doors to the Akasha and all the light, love, and wisdom of the Akasha open to us now, and so it is. Okay, so this is kind of cool and kind of interesting. So the first visual that I'm getting, and also please notice what you're seeing and sensing. I'm going to pause there and just give that a moment too. Like tune in. What are you seeing and sensing? Make a note of it. So the visual that I am receiving is really interesting, and it's a woman that is, like, bowing down to the feet of, and it's so interesting because I can't tell if it's, like, bowing down to the feet of, like something feminine or masculine or both. My first sense was that it was, like, bowing down to the feet of, like, the masculine, and we have to be really gracious about this too because it's kind of the world that has been built in the world that we live in, which is fine. And if we even think about, like, a lot of the times with the Akashic records, what we're untangling is our experience with the the male figure godhead, like even through religion, right? It's like be the good girl, do the good thing. And like through that there is like acceptance and there is redemption. And And so there is like often like a part of us that is conditioned without even knowing it, like to be the good girl, right? So there's something around that. And I'm just going to pause and I'm going to tune in because I'm still getting this visual of like the feminine, like kissing the foot, like bowing down. And it's not necessarily, I don't get like anything inherently negative about it. But the visual is strong and there's definitely something around it. And notice what comes up for you. What comes up for you around like bowing down, kissing the foot of, that can be done in like a really like an act of adoration for something that is like so beautiful where we're so appreciative of it, but there's also something else around it. And I'm gonna go ahead and tune in. Yeah, it's about acceptance. And that is why so much of this journey of like, reclamation when we speak about feminine power is about where we can reclaim it for ourselves. It's like, where can we come into like acceptance of our beauty, truth, and power, which are usually like the kind of like the three core pieces, our beauty, truth, and power, like for ourselves, right? Outside of like any need to receive that from others or from the masculine. And um, let me keep tuning in because it's hard to say sometimes. There's so many layers to this. It's not necessarily that it has to be from exactly the masculine. It could be showing up in other ways. So I'm going to go ahead and tune in. Okay, good. She's finally moving. Okay, so there's that piece. Mm. So this woman, it's definitely like pulling from some sort of like a priestess lineage. And this same woman is like walking kind of like to a stage, I guess, and it's very performative, and she is performing for like accolades. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with this, only it's still like, it's still like kind of got a little bit of that perfectionist, like um perfectionism and like performing for the appreciation of the male gaze. And so it's like this again is the spiral. It's like, where's like, it may not be like showing up as a piece that's like really predominant and really strong, but where could there be a layer of this showing up? Like for all of us, because that's the journey. It's like, where are we peeling back another layer of where we tend to show up in maybe a performative way? And I have to say, like, this could even like, kind of like following the strand of like what's coming through. This could even be like following it back to like sex, right? Performative. It's like part of the way that sometimes the feminine has been conditioned to perform. And part of the reclamation comes back to us being able to, there's nothing wrong with performing, and there's nothing wrong with, of course, being in our sensuality and our sexuality and being in the joy of it, especially when it's for us. Like when it's just done in a way um, where we get to enjoy the expression of being in our sexuality in a way that it feels good to us, in a way that it feels good to our pleasure, and in a way that it actually heals. Okay, this is kind of interesting because we're talking about the father wound, and it so interesting because it almost makes more sense that it would have tied to last week and not necessarily this week. So I, I'm kind of listening and I can see how it connects. And also, it seems a little out of place, but let's just follow the energy of it. Let's just follow the energy of it. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to keep tuning in and we're going to get into some clearing work and we're going to see where this all plays out. Also, at this juncture, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take a sip of water, but I want you to notice what's coming up in your body. So, any felt sense, right? Any like, are you feeling this in your heart? Are you feeling it in your shoulders, in your throat, in the hips? Just go ahead and like tune in, like what is showing up in at the level of body. And actually, as you do that, can you share? Can you just share what's coming up for you? Like at the level of body, I'd be so curious. And I'm going to tune into what is showing up at the level of body. Yeah. So for me, it's showing up at not the sacral, but at the personal power chakra. And it has to do with how bright I shine that yellow light. That's my sense. I'm feeling it in the, yeah, totally. I'm feeling it in the solar. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That's where I'm feeling it too. I'd be so curious. Anyone else want to share? This is so cool. I love looking at how it ties into our body. Like magnetism and personal power. And the message around that too is it is ours. It is ours. It is ours. Heart chakra, Tabitha. Okay, cool. Beautiful. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely witnessing that. Okay, this, to me, it really has to do too with like the full free expression of like being a woman. The full free expression of like being a woman. Okay. And it's hard as young women and even in past lifetimes, we're going to look at the clearing work right away. I often find for women, okay, this is interesting. Oh, I love this actually. There, especially in past lifetimes, there's this push pull around like the approval and appreciation of like the father and then the like the spouse, right? Because for a lot of history, and this doesn't include every culture of course, but there is the like the dowries, right? So for the feminine it was the dance between often like the following the rules and the mold that the father figure needed and the spouse. I love this. I'm just going to check chat and see if anything came out. Anything lower back right side. Lower back right side. Okay, cool. Okay. Okay, interesting. Okay, let's go ahead and see what we're ready to unshackle and untangle. This actually feels really, to me, really big. And all of this is like so subconscious. So it's like where the question for me, that the piece that's coming through is like, where have we been limiting our expression? Right. And it's very, to me, there's this sense of like this polarization between like two masculines, right? And it's like it's all subconscious and it's like and this is like where we start to distort our expression instead of our expression being the pure expression of who we are as women and done in a way that's actually meant for like our own like liberation and own pleasure and our own fulfillment and our own ecstatic living. Okay, let's go ahead and now I'm going to whoop, oh, my tripod almost tipped over. And now I'm going to go ahead and look up what's coming up. So I'm going to go ahead and ask the Akashic Guides Guardians to open up the Akashic record of myself, of course, and any woman on this call and any woman who will be listening to this call in the future. And if this speaks to you, of course, you can go ahead and just say yes. Beautiful. And let's go ahead. I'm going to ask for the energetic block specific to what it is that we are activating, clearing, and realigning to in the family shadow work journey. Okay. So the first thing that's coming through is like, and of course, it's like it's a little bit harder to be specific, and yet we'll get something specific, right? Because of why we're all gathered here. The first thing that I'm seeing is like it's a servant girl pattern. So I'm seeing this young girl, and she is like tending to the chickens. But she's like tending to the chickens and tending to her father and tending to her family and tending to her um I even see it as like attending to the brother and tending to the and tending. I don't know that she was necessarily married yet. I'm going to ask a couple questions about the specific story that we're being presented with. So was she married yet? No. Yeah, so there's like this young girl, and she's probably about 16 or 17, and it's like um the role of like servant girl. Like it really was. It was kind of like, the brothers had their place to go out and like hunt, and they were kind of like had that um protector provider relationship with the father figure, and the daughter is there, and it's kind of more like the servant girl. She's like doing all of the more menial tasks. She's doing more of the menial tasks, and it's like everybody else before her. And that was kind of like, even in that lifetime and the way that it's coming through, it was like kind of like, how the feminine would have received admiration or approval. It was like, good job. Like you put everybody else before you. And then I'm seeing this like girl, and she's, again, she's like about 14, 15, maybe 16, and she's going to bed and she's sad. Like there's a disconnect from like the freedom and the truth of like who she is and what she wants. And yet she's like followed all of the, I guess, like the rules, quote unquote, and the expectations of what it means to be a young woman. And there's like something about kind of like the disconnect, right? She's like there, and she's like, if I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to do, and this is like part of how we're raised, and part of how we integrate into society, and part of what we rewild, like part of what we untangle, right? Is like where we were conditioned to do all the things, and yet all the things really never led us to like oftentimes the love and acceptance and approval that we like deeply wanted. So I'm seeing her in bed, and she's like, I followed all the rules, but like why do I feel sad? Like why do I feel sad? So I want to see the what the block is, because there's something specifically. And I think what I'm noticing is that this has to do with where we have followed the rules, because there's always another layer. It's so subconscious that, it could be in business, it can be in relationships, it can be in our family matrix, it can be in the framework of just like society. It's so subconscious, because it's like, well, if I do this and this and this is like how, this is the expectation, this is the standard, and this is how I receive appreciation. But then we go and do all those things, and we override a deeper call to listen to what we want and what we need and what we desire. And we end up in that place where there's been that element of sacrifice. Okay, this is it. So let me see what the block is. And I think it's connected to sacrifice, but going back to that lifetime, what is specifically is the block? It's a belief. Okay. And it's sitting at the first chakra, second chakra, third chakra, um, fourth chakra. The heart chakra. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, and it's a belief. Okay, and then in that lifetime, though, it was picked up from the mother. So it's like it's a past lifetime block, but it's actually also connected to the mother line. And the belief sitting at the heart chakra is the more I do, um, the more I do, the more I'm loved. Oh, yeah. Okay. So that's the belief, right? So notice in your own experience where it's like the more I do, the more I'm loved. There's nothing necessarily it's to me when we're looking at these blocks, it's always about like how to create more balance. I find for the most part when we're looking at untangling these soul level blocks, it's where there's been imbalance and then it creates separation because it's like because we are connected, like we are one. So it's like there is that fabric of like giving, but there's also the fabric, within the scope of that fabric, there's also like that place of like being and receiving. But what we're looking at is like where the imbalance of like doing and giving, right? With the undercurrent of like it allows with the other undercurrent of like the more I give, the more I'm like loved or appreciated, right? We want to look at like where that is showing up so that we can clear that out and bring more balance because it is about, where we can give and do in a loving and supportive way, but we're doing it from a place that is like congruent and in alignment with like the truth of who we are, what we want, what we need, and what we desire. Right. And everything gets recalibrated from that place. So let's go ahead and hopefully you have your journal, but let's go ahead. I'm going to go back and I'm going to clear that block, but just in this space, just taking a moment and going to your journal and just like very loosely writing out what do I want? What do I need? What do I desire? Like, let's just drop in and kind of like touch into that. And like, I mean, I get it. I carry like the healer archetype. So it's like I'm always looking at where to bring that into balance again. What do I want? What do I need? What do I desire? Like just drop into it. And we just want to kind of like circle back to the clarity of that because it's like from that space where everything else can be recalibrated to. Right. And then from that place, that clarity, that becomes a part of our root system. And like from there, that clarity, we can start to cultivate boundaries, right? Like, yes, this aligns to that. No, this doesn't. And then it's like, and I'm actually just seeing like a circle being drawn around us. Like, this is what you want. This is what you need. Right. And it's like, does this honor that? Yes. Does it not honor it? No. And then I just want to take this a step further too. Like, and I know with family, it becomes a little bit trickier sometimes, right? Like when it's like we do need to say no, it does need to be about honoring our energy. And yet sometimes like we are like, it can get a little bit like entangled with family, right? So sometimes it's not like an immediate like no. But let's go ahead and just feel into what do you want? What do you need? What do you desire? What is your vision? And, you can spend you can spend time really cultivating your vision. You totally can. But like in a very loose way, like what is your vision? Like what is the vision you have for your family? What is the vision that you have for your life, for your business? And then everything from here becomes a choice. Like, is this a choice that allows me to move this vision and to ground this vision? Is it a yes or is it a no? So that's what we're kind of clearing out, right? It's like when it's this return to sovereignty, it's like we don't necessarily, we're relinquishing the need for external approval. And like that's the hope for every being on the planet. So bringing this back to the vision, there's one I want to take this a layer deeper. Okay, here it is. Let's go ahead and feel into. So I just want you to notice what you notice about what a yes in your body feels like. So what is a yes in your body? Like, yes, I feel good about taking this on, about doing this, about saying yes to this. Like, what does that feel like in your body? What is a yes that's congruent to what you need, what you want, what you desire? And again, it's not always easy, especially with family, especially with children. Totally get it. But it's like the journey, right? Of like just of um of clarity and connection to like what this feels like and what it looks like for us. So what does a yes feel like in your body? Something that like crosses your field and it's an invitation into something and it's like a yes, like yes, that feels good. And then what does a no feel like in your body? Okay, so here's the other piece that I want to weave in around this is negotiation. Because negotiation between the feminine and the masculine, there is something around that negotiation, right? When we have the clarity around what we want, need, desire, what our vision is, right? And so sometimes it's like an immediate yes, like this aligns, this feels good. I love this. And then sometimes it's a no, like right away, right? It feels heavy, it doesn't feel in alignment, our body can sense it, it doesn't feel right. Right? The body is such a beautiful, intelligent compass with all of this. So if it's a no, and especially when it has to do with family, it's like, where is there an opportunity to negotiate? So if whatever is being presented doesn't necessarily work, where can you renegotiate with the people in your environment in a way where whatever is being asked of you could work, but it needs to be reworked in a way that actually works for you. And there might be that clarity in this space, but more so, I just want to kind of highlight it as like the potential for when these pieces show up, that we have the awareness and the tools to pull back and look at how to shift patterns to support our sovereignty and our energy and our capacity, right? In a way that works and feels congruent to what we need, what we want, what we desire, and what our vision is. So where could it be reworked, right? And that I think is so cool. And it's part of the reharmonizing. It's like, you know what? It's like this works for me, but this doesn't work for me. And do you think that I can do it, but do you think we could do it in a way that works like this? So I'm going to go back. I'm going to go ahead and clear that block that we were looking at the heart chakra in that past lifetime, the belief, right? That the more that I do, the more that I'm loved. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ask that that belief be cleared right to the point of creation, right to the point of creation. And then it's cleared backwards and forwards through all spaces, realities, timelines, dimensions, and then it's transmuted to divine love and light and then released fully back to source. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so it is. Beautiful. Okay. And it's really like these boundaries and the renegotiation and like being clear on like the deeper pieces of who we are, what we want, what we desire, what our vision is. It's like where it's self-love, right? It's like we grow into the root system of who we are as women. It's like where we deepen into self-love, into sovereignty. And then it's where we are able to recalibrate our internal world to the external world. but it all starts to become self-sourced from our relationship to ourself. Okay, let's go another layer deeper in the clearing work. I'm loving this. We're only like, what, 40 minutes in, and I feel like we've covered so much. Okay. How's that sitting with everyone? Share with me is what's so far been like the um biggest insight? Like what's kind of like what is like illuminating clarity to you as like a missing piece? Share and chat. I'd love to hear. I'm also gonna take a bite of my apple. Sorry, it's gonna crunch. Just give me a sec. You know what's standing out to me as the biggest piece of clarity for all of us? You can tell me if this resonates or not. It's renegotiation. Like you do have permission to renegotiate old contracts. Things that no longer work for you, you have the permission to renegotiate. Like you're on an evolutionary path as a woman. Like if you are listening to the call of soul, right? Like you are on an evolutionary path. And so you have permission to renegotiate contracts, patterns, obligations, agreements. Like that is up for renegotiation, right? So it's like who you were a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, where agreements were made, like you've grown. So like of course, that renegotiation gets to be a part of that. Okay. So let's go a layer deeper. I still want to hear though in chat, like what is standing out for you? Like what was the piece that was kind of being highlighted for you? I would love to hear. And like just allowing me to witness you. And I'm going to continue on, but taking a moment and just sharing that piece. I'm going to take another bite of my apple. You know, the next piece that's coming up is actually around unjustified negative karma. So this is really interesting. So unjustified negative karma, I don't know exactly, of course, like what the story is around this, but let's see here. Okay, so unjustified, it feels heavy, like it's like something that collectively we're carrying that we don't actually need to carry. And oh gosh, I see it. Okay. And it has to do with carrying the burden of like the masculine areas of performing, only wanting to be seen in my fullness when I'm succeeding, both in my home and my online. Yes, totally. Yeah, I can relate to that one too. Yeah, totally. Beautiful. Unjustified negative karma. You guys, I love this. Okay, so I have to put my I have to tune into this, but there's unjustified negative karma, and it's where the feminine carries like the burden of the masculine. You know, and this is a tough one because if we're okay, so we're thinking, you know, we last week we talked about spice and a spouse, not spice, spouse last week, and then we're taking it a layer deeper with parent, like father. And there's this unjustified negative karma, which unjustified negative karma is always where there's been something difficult or traumatic that's happened in a past experience, and where we end up feeling responsible for whatever happened, even though it wasn't our fault. And then that's where we end up holding the karma, like family karma, even. So I'm so interested to see, because this to me has to do with where we carry the burden of the masculine. And it for the feminine can feel like if heavy. And part of that is where the masculine is disconnected from the feminine. It's so interesting. And so we end up carrying where the masculine hasn't always been able to show up and fulfill certain levels of like success. We're gonna go into this a little bit more. And also, let's see, Tabitha, renegotiation and obligation, like in oh yes, in family traditions. Learned a lot with Easter with my family this weekend. That is so true. Yes, I agree with that one. For me, that was at Christmas. Like that was like solstice. Like where no one in my everyone, was still doing Christian traditions. Nothing necessarily wrong with that. But like part of the renegotiation piece for me was like I don't feel congruent with a lot of that, and where can we make space for some of like where my feminine wisdom is wanting to support the family unit. So I get that piece. I love that. Love it. Okay, cool. Now, unjustified negative karma. Let's go and see what is showing up around this. It feels so good because I feel like there is a letting go. Like it's not our job to carry the masculine. And so many women that show up on this evolutionary journey, like we're awake, we see what's possible, we are tuned into like our star seed wisdom, we know we're here to be a part of the collective healing and the evolution, and we have our partners and our spouses and like bless them. But generally speaking, what I have seen is that the evolutionary woman travels a lot faster, right? And it's like, and then also what happens too sometimes is when women are learning how to make money on this path, like in the brilliance of like their feminine gifts and along their soul path, is that we end up like relying on more of like the masculine for financial support. And yet they don't necessarily have the opportunity, and it's different for everyone, and yet they don't necessarily have the opportunity to step into like the genius of like their soul level gifts, right? Or like their like heart-centered mission, right? So there can be sometimes like a disconnect there. And then we end up leaning on the masculine sometimes for financial security because of the history of the feminine. And then we end up carrying some of the emotional burden or debt because they don't necessarily have the space to bring through the fulfillment that they're desiring. And of course, this differs for like every person. And this can relate to our fathers as well. So let's go ahead though. I'm going to look at what the unjustified negative karma is. And then I think from there, it's going to illuminate and fall into place in whatever way it needs to for each person who will be listening to this. Yes, I'm taking another bite of my apple. Okay. So unjustified negative karma, and then what is coming up? Hmm. The thing that's coming up already in this past lifetime experience is the father, even the brother, of having to make the sacrifice of going to war, the protection provider, right, of what the masculine actually had to give up to provide and protect the feminine, right? And I know for me along my journey too, it was so much in my younger years around the wounded feminine until I really started to look at like what the masculine has had to endure on this planet as well. But if we look at this lifetime, I'll share a little bit more. So there's like a family. It's interesting because it's like actually a family of women predominantly. There's like maybe 4 or 5 women, the mother, the sister, quite a few sisters, and then a brother and then the father. And both the brother and the father are going off to war. Right. And of course they didn't want to leave. And of course there was sadness and sadness on both parts, the feminine and the masculine. And so we're coming through. So the predominant role that's coming through, I just want to ask a couple questions. Is it the wife? Like in that lifetime? Yeah, it's like the wife. Okay. So here's what happens is that the wife in that lifetime, the mother wife, gets spread thin because now she's got to carry both the templates of the masculine and the feminine. Now she has got to spread herself thin by being both the nurturer and the provider protector. So there's that piece like showing up too, right? And it's like it's hard on everyone. And there's this element of like just an overall like sadness of like the separation and the hardship. Sorry. Just the separation and the hardship that happened in that lifetime. So if I look at the unjustified negative karma and I'm being drawn to the mother, so you're just noticing in your experience of being the mother, and sometimes it's so subconscious and it'll play out in obvious ways, and other times it won't. It's more subtle. So so the unjustified negative karma. So something difficult or traumatic would have had to have happened, and then the mother would have felt responsible for it. And I think, in that lifetime, the mother definitely felt a degree of like responsibility for the children. And so it was like the aspect of her that wanted to both nurture and protect, that wanted to both nurture and protect, and yet she couldn't. She couldn't. And so it was like the absence of the masculine, right, who had to sacrifice to go to war. So they're like usually, in terms of war, like that's like steeped with like patriarchal consciousness, the fear, the lack, the limitation, scarcity. And if I'm looking at the mother and I'm looking at like how she ended up taking responsibility for the family unit, yeah, it's like all of it. It would have been like the upkeep, just like the general, like keeping things tidy and organized, the well-being of the family. The family felt loved, that like the mother in that lifetime is like so doing it all, and she's so tired. Like she's so tired, and so she's like carrying like the burden sometimes of like the masculine, and then also trying to be in her feminine. This is a really good one, right? Because sometimes, um so that okay, this can show up in different ways. So we're looking at like the masculine father, like the feminine and the father, which if we think about it, and we have spouses or partners, it is both the spouse and the father energy. But it's about where we sometimes feel stretched thin, and where we sometimes have to wear both hats, and where it sometimes leaves us feeling like really out of balance, and then carrying aspects of like where the masculine can't be present. But I want to say too, it's like it's not about, of course, like casting judgment or blame, and not that anyone is. And it's okay to also feel like anger and upset around where that may be showing up in your experience. Totally normal, totally fine, and totally something that we want to give 100% permission to feel. Right. And so sometimes this can show up even in the scope of our businesses, where it's like we feel like we have to do it all, and it feels so heavy, and we feel like we're dancing, and we feel so like we're like pulled in like several different directions. Right. And if we clear this unjustified negative karma, which I'm going to do right now, I'm going to ask that this unjustified negative karma be cleared right to the point of creation. And it's really like this like unjustified negative karma carrying the energetic statement of like, it's like sacrifice. And I'm going to ask that this unjustified negative karma be cleared right to the point of creation, backwards and forwards through all spaces, realities, timelines, and dimensions, and that it be transmuted to divine love and light, and then released fully back to source. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so it is. Because this also is about like recognizing where the masculine has had to make sacrifices, but also where the masculine has had to make sacrifices, and where it's also not your job to carry the imbalance anymore. Right? This comes back to renegotiation. It's okay to ask for more, to bring yourself back into harmony and balance and realignment. Right? And that's the power of the Akashic records, is that we just like get to clear away the old. And also, it's okay to renegotiate. I love this renegotiation piece, but renegotiate contracts in terms of like how you're allowing yourself to be supported in your own business. right? So this could be like hiring, I don't know, it could be like hiring like a VA, it could be like hiring support people, it could be somebody that, right, is there to like support you. And this is also about knowing that the divine, so like the internal templates of like your feminine, knowing how you want to nurture your family, your community, your business, and knowing that you aren't doing this all alone, that there is a higher holy masculine that's working on your behalf, right? Moving, the universe wants to like shift, realign, and move pieces to fully support you, right? That it's like part of like how we start to relinquish our need to lean on the physical masculine and start to open to receive from the divine masculine that is always there, providing, protecting, and assisting us in our creative evolutionary path as spirited women. So anywhere in your body too that you're feeling that sense of heaviness, in terms of like where you feel like the masculine has maybe had to make sacrifice, or where you've had to pick up the slack for where the masculine hasn't been available or present. And just taking a few breaths into that, maybe moving your body a bit, like just feeling into it, breathing, moving it out of the body. Okay, let's turn this around. Let's also look at where we can love and appreciate the masculine, where the masculine does show up. And that can be how the masculine structures or systems in your business support you. It can be how the support people in your experience support you. It can be how money shows up for you. It can be how the divine shows up for you. And it can be how the masculine in your life and your business shows up for you. So go ahead and like, let's write down and bring some gratitude and appreciation for that. Maybe a list of like 10 things, 10 ways, 10 things. And then this is an invitation too to go ahead and post that in the Facebook group just to be witnessed. I can definitely do this too. I can definitely take a moment and feel into what that looks like for me. But 10 ways, so beautiful. So we can kind of like, we've cleared out where the disconnect is, but then also how we can come into deeper relationship with the masculine. So if it's like not so much about like performance or like appreciation and the need to be loved anymore, and it just gets to be about what we need, want, desire, and what our vision is and how the masculine can support us, then it gets simplified, right? It's like naturally how it's supposed to be. And we can bring appreciation in to start to heal where the gap is. And then we can start to renegotiate some of those old contracts, right? What needs to shift into alignment to where we're going to support our unique vision, desires, needs, wants as women? Okay. I'm going to leave this here today. So I said each call was about 75 minutes, but I wanted to leave some space for either an hour, right, to 90 minutes, depending on how the information flows. But to me, this feels complete for today. And I feel like we moved quite quickly through a lot of really great pieces. Beautiful. So the last piece that's coming through is around using your voice, which we're going to get into. I feel next week when we start to look at some of the mother wound and using your voice. And so, right, because when we go to renegotiate contracts, it does become about, having conversations to address what works for us and what doesn't work for us. It becomes about boundaries that allows the fullness of our feminine vision, our essence, our wants, needs, and desires to begin to take up space in the physical world. So I find with Akashic record clearing work that sometimes it just happens naturally, like things you couldn't say, you didn't have the clarity on before, you'll just like spit it out. Like, oh, that was easy because we've cleared and shifted. And then just sometimes we have to be mindful if we're pushing up against where it feels vulnerable to speak it. And we'll deepen into that um, next call for sure. But also just like what is going to allow you to feel safe, right? So if you're pushing up against that, like, I know I need to ask for this, I know I need to communicate this, but I'm like stuck in a little bit of like fear, hesitation around this. Just tune in to your essence, like hand over heart. What am I pushing up against? But also, what is going to allow me to feel safe? Like, and sometimes it's like creating a little bit of sacred space. Sometimes it's just like regulating the nervous system, a little bit of self care, whatever it might be. So, just noticing what you notice over the next week around the opportunity to have conversations, to ask for more of what you need, want, desire. All right. So, let's go ahead, just take a deep breath in through the nose, down into the energetic womb space, up and out through the mouth. Noticing what you notice in your body. If you need to breathe into any spaces in your body, just allowing this to integrate. Make sure you drink lots of water over the next 24 hours. If you need to dance or move, anything that's kind of like wanting to wiggle its way out of your body, do that. If you need to have a cry or if you need to, like, beat a pillow because there's some anger coming up, do that. And go ahead and share in the Facebook group. Like, absolutely. This is deep work. I'm going to go ahead and thank the guides, guardians, masters, angels, teachers who have been a part of this experience today. And then just knowing that the clarity, healing intentions, activations from today, it's all going to unfold into completion for your highest good. And the door between the worlds is now closed. And so it is. Beautiful. And even if you just want to lay there for like a minute or two after we get off the call and just let it all integrate, beautiful. Okay. Awesome. I will see you all next Monday, same time. Drop into the Facebook group, share what's going on, and I shall talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.